So I got into some hot water in my last video when I said that Strike was the worst Call of Duty 4 map, and I would like to apologize quick. Opinions differ from person to person. It just so happens, though, that my opinion is the correct one. I was born this way, I didn't choose it, it's just how it is. I'm sorry, everybody. But every so often, a certain kind of map will come along that it seems like everyone is united against. And today, I wanted to focus on that unity and figure out exactly what makes an objectively bad Call of Duty map, at least in the eyes of the community. So we're gonna go through some of the most universally hated maps throughout the years and see if we can reverse engineer exactly why they were so despised with what I call the 5 sins of COD map design. And to do that, I'm gonna have to run it back to Call of Duty Ghosts, which obviously wasn't the most well-received map pool ever, and that was mostly because they tried ditching the standard 3-lane design that most maps prior to this point incorporated. And I know that a lot of the time I kind of dog on the whole 3-lane thing, but there is actually a reason at the end of the day that almost every single map is divisible by 3 like this. And it's just because it just works.
It just works.
But instead of following this tried and true method of map design, a lot of Ghosts maps erred on the side of realism, and we'd end up with these overly huge and complicated map designs, like Whiteout, which feels like 6 different maps all smashed together violently, or Chasm, which, to be honest, dude, I don't even know what the fuck to make. I feel like I'm staring at a Rorschach test. And then there's maps like Siege or Stormfront, but honestly, I could make an entire video breaking down this game's weird map designs. But in the interest of time, I'm just gonna fast forward to the main subject of this section, which is Stonehaven, a map that commits the very first cardinal sin of COD map design. It's just way too goddamn big. Stonehaven is the kind of map that I could make up just about anything about, and you'd believe me because you already tuned me out the second that I brought up Stonehaven, and actually takes place in New Jersey. But now to really get a sense of how big this goddamn thing was, I ran some tests, and it turns out that it takes a staggering 37 entire seconds to cross from spawn to spawn here, which for reference is nearly double the amount of time that it takes to cross in BO6's largest 3 maps, which is extra insane given that the time to kill in Ghosts was faster than most people's internet connection. So in actual games, you'd end up running dead sprint toward all the action for a solid 25 seconds or so, only to be randomly killed by someone before you even have time to see them and have to start all over again from spawn. It was aggravating, it was annoying, it was poopy. Nobody liked it. Going back in time a little bit further, and another widely disliked big open nothingness map is Wasteland from the original Modern Warfare 2, where they just made and then shipped a giant open field with a couple of trenches cut in it like we're in 1914 France. The only thing I can think of is that some dev out there really wanted to make a map that would work great for sniping, but no one told them that the weapons team were making quickscoping the most satisfying thing in the entire world, to the point that the word hardscoper would become a derogatory term for somebody using a sniper for its intended purpose. And really, the only close quarters areas on the map were in the 2 or 3 buildings scattered around the perimeter, or in the bunker in the direct center, which became the mother of all choke points, with all roads leading in. Other massive open area maps include World War II's Gustav Cannon, although it was kind of like the opposite side of Wasteland's coin, as it subbed out the underground bunker for a tall cannon dominating the middle of the map, creating this big King of the Hill type experience. But then they also made the hill bulletproof, which that was a choice. Now, shifting gears for a second, I want to talk about another key aspect of bad Call of Duty maps, and that's something that I like to call lopsided design. Now, tons of maps do this, but just to help illustrate, I'm gonna hyper-focus and break down the map Crisis, which I feel like 80% confident in calling everyone's least favorite Black Ops 1 map. Crisis is the kind of map that just feels like it has another map hanging off the side of it, you know? Like on one end, you have this Cuban village that acts as the main section of the map where all the action takes place. But then you turn and it just sorta keeps going into this bunker and then eventually onto the beach where nothing ever really happens organically. This is the sort of thing that a lot of old school Modern Warfare maps did a ton too, where their spawns would just go on forever, like a crazy amount. But in Crysis's case, it's more than just the spawns. Like if you applied a heat map over the whole thing, I have a feeling you'd only see action in the bottom half of the play space. Because trust me, no one ever used this whole upper area unless they absolutely needed to in domination or something like that. But honestly, parts of the maps just not being used was actually the best case scenario. And at worst, these lopsided layouts would just make life hell for a specific side of the map. Like Subbase's infamous demolition spawn trap, where the other team could just corner you in this little cutout by the subs. Or MW3's mission, with the big wall that effectively cut the lower spawn from accessing most of the map. Or even more recently was Miami, which on top of having a bunch of beach area that no one ever bothered to run to, also had the map's main power position weighted toward the east side. So those on the west always felt like they had an uphill battle ahead of them. And sticking with Treyarch for a minute, while most of their maps throughout the years have actually been pretty consistent, there is one other widely accepted bad Black Ops series map that I do want to highlight, and that is Jungle Flooded in Black Ops 4. Now, I talk about this a lot, but Black Ops 4 in general kind of lost me pretty early into the game's life cycle, and Jungle Flooded here was actually a DLC map, which means that I actually don't personally have any first-hand experience with it. But according to people who have played Jungle Flooded during the height of BO4, it was fucking awful. And I can kind of see why. If the title didn't already give it away, they took the classic map Jungle and just flooded it with water, presumably to justify the jobs of whatever team had to spend months on the swimming mechanics that nobody asked for. Yeah, I don't know what it is about swimming levels in video games, man, but it just feels like they're universally always hated. I'm talking about, like, go all the way back to Super Mario Bros. Like, nobody liked 2-2. Let's be real. But here we are decades later, and devs are still trying desperately to get gamers to take a bath. And I don't want to take a bath, Mom! Sorry, tangent aside, Jungle Flooded committed the sin of basing an entire map around a specific mechanic or gimmick that isn't inherently fun, aka swimming. And now the whole isn't inherently fun part of that rule is definitely up to interpretation, and it's a little bit hard to define with real words, but I feel like you kinda know it when you see it. Because there are tons of maps that do this very well. There's Express with the train, Defender's Tidal Wave, Kowloon's zip lines, or even the more subtle ones, like the state's soft King of the Hill focus, or Decoy's almost 100% destructible environment, all of which I think work incredibly well. But the problem is that it's high risk, high reward, because for every one of those good maps that I mentioned, there's another Black Gold, or Yard, or Freefall, or, God forbid, Arsenal Sandstorm. But as with many of the sins on this list, they tend to overlap with the other ones, and a lot of maps fit into multiple categories. For instance, Wasteland from before isn't just a bad map because of the size, but also because it was focused primarily on the playstyle of traditional sniping, which, as we mentioned, wasn't very fun or even really accepted in that particular game. All of that said though, it is definitely worth it for the devs to at least try these unique map mechanics. Because while they can't all be winners, this is the kind of variety that keeps the game fresh, which is a bit of a double-edged sword that we'll hit on with another one of these sins here in a minute. So, the next bad map attribute that I want to highlight is visibility. And for that, I'm going to bring you here to Downturn, which on top of just being too big and flat, was also just too desaturated and dull. Like, I'm starting to get a little depressed, and I'm not actually here right now. Plus, the entire map was just overloaded with debris and rubble, cluttering the entire screen. And so if you're anything like me, and your depression is caused by ADHD, it's incredibly easy to miss players in the visual chaos. And similarly, we have British Downturn, possibly the least visible map in a game defined by maps with poor visibility, like Asshair Cave, Euphrates Bitch, Grozna AIDS, etc. And while I think Piccadilly specifically stands out as bad for a number of other reasons, like its campiness and weird flow, the thing that really throws it over the edge is the game's lighting actually being too realistic and making it nearly impossible to see anyone at night. Enemy at the buses! And finally, the last stop on our tour of the worst Call of Duty maps brings us to Mexican Piccadilly. Emphasis on the dilly, which is the poster child of our 5th and final issue, Shape. I mean, this thing is a long map. And I shouldn't have to tell you that the longer a map is, not only the more totally original dick jokes you'll get in YouTube comment sections, but also the worse the map's spawn traps will become. And now I'm using a particularly long map as an example here, but this attribute actually kind of catches all maps that have strange shapes in general that lead to really odd flows. Like there's Bog, that's just a big open field with a single flanking lane on the south end. Or Turbine and its signature like 7x3 lane map design, cutting through the Grand fucking Canyon. Or even Satellite's tack map that looks like it's melting in the desert heat. And of course, this one kind of overlaps with the whole lopsided layouts thing I was talking about before. But the main difference is that these maps seem to be purposefully made to have different flows and vibes. Like, I know I'm trying to stay away from super recent CODs, but there's just no way that you end up with something like Bullet by accident. Santa Sena, though, gets bonus bad map points because for the first few months, every time that someone threw a grenade on the map, it would detonate all the cars trapped in gridlock traffic, which, like pimple popping videos, is oddly satisfying until you get caught in the crossfire. And with that, we now have our 5 attributes that make a bad Call of Duty map. We got 1, size. The map is just too gosh dang big. 2, lopsided layouts, creating entire sections of the map that go unused. 3, bad gimmicks. When a map is built around a specific playstyle that sucks, so does the map. 4, poor visibility. Gotta be able to see the people I'm shooting. That's like the one thing they teach you at a gun safety course. And 5, shape. Not every map has to fit in the square hole, but it shouldn't be actively ruining flow just to stand out. So therefore, with all of this criteria in mind, I have concluded that the worst Call of Duty map in franchise history is Strike. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Anyway, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Huge shout out to all my channel members. They're everywhere on the screen right now. I'm losing my voice. Could you hear that? If you want to become a channel member, hit that little join button down below, or you can hit the subscribe button, or you can hit like, or you could comment something like, you were right, Strike is terrible. I don't know. Do any of those things. Do all of them. Call to actions are supposed to be short, damn it.